Well, at this penalty phase of the trial, the second section of the trial, any evidence in mitigation of the offense is admissible to determine whether or not the defendants ought to live or die. And we certainly intend to put on some information about the defendants concerning their background and history, where they went to school, what their childhood was like. We intend unquestionably to put on parents and relatives of the defendants. In addition, there's been a tremendous amount of controversy during the course of the trial about life in the Manson family. We intend to put on people from the family to testify about the defendants and about life in the family. We also intend to introduce some evidence that would indicate that the defendants may not be entirely guilty of the offenses themselves.
Or starts the drive to save the life of your client and also the lives of the other co-defendants in the Charles Manson murder trial. Do you have a game plan, so to speak?
Convicted these defendants beyond a reasonable doubt, but one of the standards we are going to suggest to the jury is that if they're going to vote to execute these people, they ought to be absolutely certain that they committed these offenses. And we would want to put on some aspects of our case that we didn't put on during the guilt phase of the trial. We also anticipate that perhaps one or more of the defendants themselves would testify.
This then essentially will be a sort of a four-part, this is your life type thing.
Right.
This is your life, Patricia Krenwinkel.
Right. In order to assess, probably the most important decision anybody can make in their life, probably a decision most of us wouldn't like to make, whether or not another human being should live or die. If we're going to make that kind of decision, we ought to really have as much information as at our disposal about the person we're talking about. Then we ought to know as much as humanly possible. We ought to do some sort of this is your life.
Have you had any kind of problem in inducing relatives of these defendants to come to court and tell their stories?
I think that the close relatives of all but one of the defendants, and I have particularly in mind Charles Manson, the other close relatives have actually been very, very loyal. And I think the only reason they haven't been in the courtroom itself during the guilt phase of the trial is that they want to preserve what's left of their private life. Sure. And they just don't want to be exposed to the publicity. So as far as the close relatives are concerned, some of the past employers, some of the people who knew the defendants peripherally, some who knew them casually, and some of the more distant relatives have been extremely reluctant to give information in connection with the defendants and certainly to testify.
Do you know off the top of your head who among the defendants will take the stand?
Well, it's difficult to determine at this time, but it appears likely that Manson will take the stand. It appears likely that Susan Atkins will take the stand. It appears unlikely at this time that Leslie Van Houten and Patricia Krenwinkel will take the witness stand. But of course, that obviously is subject to change, and we'll certainly evaluate the situation as it occurs. And then, of course, in this case, of all cases, things aren't very certain.
In putting any of the defendants on the stand, this does open them up to cross-examination. Now, can the prosecutor go into any subjects which were not, which he was not able to go into during the guilt phase of the trial?
Yes, and that, of course, is one big tactical reason why I think attorneys are reluctant to place their respective clients on the witness stand during the penalty phase, because if the client doesn't, or the defendant doesn't demonstrate the requisite amount of remorse, or somehow doesn't come off, and of course he's subjected to what I would suspect in this case would be a painstaking, thorough
Yeah.
cross-examination. It could be very, very dangerous. On the other hand, the contravailing reason, I suppose, is that one of the very good ways to tell a jury what somebody's like is to let them be exposed to that person, let
Yeah.
that person talk and actually communicate directly. It's difficult to do it through a third person.
Have any of the
Do it again, Dick, please.
Paul, have any of the defendants demanded to be allowed to testify in the penalty phase?
Well, the answer to that is yes, but I think that I ought to explain it a little bit. Certainly, all the attorneys in the case listen carefully to the desires of their clients, and recently, of course, the defendants have indicated very vociferously that they intended to testify at the guilt portion of the trial and intended to put on a defense, and they're adamant in those demands to the present time. The issues now at the penalty phase are substantially different than they were, and the countervailing factors, of course, aren't the same. In essence, their life is at stake, and should the defendants wish to testify in their own behalf, I think every doubt would be resolved in their favor, and that certainly we as attorneys would allow them to testify. Now, at the present time, there's been no indication on the part of Leslie Van Houten or Patricia Krenwinkel, that my clients, that they want to testify, but should there be, they certainly would.
Yeah.
I think Manson actually indicated in open court that he wished to testify, and I think that it's probable that he will testify. I also think it's probable that Susan Adkins will testify, because her attorney, Mr. Shin, has indicated that she has indicated a desire, and he's going to certainly allow her to testify.
What will happen tomorrow, mechanically or physically, I should say? What happens tomorrow?
Well, tomorrow, of course, the penalty trial opens, and I imagine there'll be some preliminary motions and some preliminary discussions. Then the prosecution will begin their case. They will present evidence in aggravation of the offenses, and they'll present evidence concerning the defendant's background and history.
I see.
And they're asking for the death penalty. I think it's a very inappropriate sort of statement that the prosecution's asking for the death penalty, but nonetheless they're going to urge the jury that the defendants ought to die, and they're going to introduce some evidence in substantiation of their request. We're unable to determine how long the prosecution's case is going to last. We get varying estimates, some a week, some 2 weeks, some as long as a month. But at the conclusion of their case, of course, we will present evidence, and then we'll follow the same formula. There'll be argument, and then jury instruction, and then deliberation.
So the penalty phase could conceivably last a month, perhaps even longer.
It could last a month, even longer, and I think that as one looks back over this case, the lawyers have been notoriously inaccurate in terms of predicting the length of every portion of this trial. I think that I personally have misled a number of people as to how long this trial is going to last. So I'm a little reluctant to make estimates of, except that it's likely to last longer than anybody anticipates.
One final question, Paul. In the event that your client and the other clients are given the death penalty, what happens then? There's an automatic appeal review of the case, and then what?
Right. As you indicate, under California law, under Penal Code Section 1239, the case is automatically appealed directly to the California Supreme Court rather than an intermediate court of appeal. And it's done whether the defendants like it or not. It's an automatic review. The California State Legislature feels that in a situation where somebody's life is going to be taken, that there ought to be a very careful review of the legal proceedings. I think a rather lengthy appellate procedure will follow, and I think that considering all the appellate remedies and avenues of appellate approach, that it would be at least 5 years before there would be a firm execution date set.
Thank you, Paul.
Welcome.
Paul, have any of the clients or your client demanded to take the stand and testify in the penalty trial? Let's do that again. Paul, have any of the clients or has your client demanded to take the stand and testify? Hold it a second. Have you had any trouble inducing any of the relatives or friends to come in and testify in this penalty phase? In the event your client and the others are found, no. In the event your client is given the death penalty and the other clients also, what happens then? Is there an automatic appeal?
As the chief law officer of the state, there's been many comments about the length of this trial. Do you have anything to say about that?
It's outrageous. I mean, of course, I'm not. That's no criticism of the judge. He's doing everything he can to control it. But again, without reference to this case, our system has deteriorated to the point where the trial of a criminal case is more like a circus than it is a judicial proceeding. And I've said and will continue to say we have to perform major legislative surgery on the system or it's going to collapse.
Mr. Attorney General, it's nice to see you here today.
Good to see you.
What are you anticipating in this trial? Why are you being called and by whom?
I understand that Mr. Canarick has had a subpoena out for me, and I just want to make it easy for him. I haven't the slightest idea what we're going to talk about, but I'll be happy to see you in I was going to say a few minutes, but that's not very realistic. I'll see you when I'm through.
Thank you.
I don't think there is any such thing as ordinary in a case like this. Thank you. Excuse me, gentlemen, I'll be with you. Hopefully, it's over this way, guys. Down there. Did you get it?
Mr. Younger, what do you have to say about this morning's testimony?
Well, most of the questions addressed to me involved a meeting which was held in the District Attorney's Office on December 4th, 1969. The meeting was attended by members of what was then my staff in the District Attorney's Office and by attorneys representing Susan Atkins. At that conference, a certain agreement was reached with respect to what the prosecution would do in certain circumstances. Immediately after the conference was over, I asked Mr. Stovitz to prepare a memorandum covering the conference. He did so. The memorandum was prepared and is now in evidence, and if you gentlemen would like a copy, you may have it.
Why did you decide not to continue to offer the arrangement to Miss Atkins? Why did you decide to change that and seek the death penalty?
I testified to that in court this morning, and I'm not certain whether the judges would consider my repeating my testimony and that to that question as proper or not. So out of an abundance of caution, I won't answer it, but I will invite your attention to the transcript where I did precisely answer that
Has the
question.
Do you feel in
prosecution ever...
reflection that your office in any way violated the agreement that it had with Miss Atkins and her attorneys?
No, sir.
Why?
For reasons I stated in court in the last couple hours.
Do you feel that Miss Atkins was not telling the truth?
Again, I answered that very precisely from the stand, and you'll have to forgive me. I don't want to get involved in any argument with the judge over semantics. It might be argued that since I testified in there, I ought to be able to repeat it now, but I'd prefer that you refer to the
It's always been the
transcript.
practice, Mr. Younger. It hasn't been considered a violation of the gag order.
Well, I probably might be subjected to a little more strict interpretation of the rules under the circumstances, and that's so long as I did answer it all on the transcript, why, I think I won't again.
Do you feel that your questioning was, your answers were rather evasive?
This morning?
Yes.
You gotta be kidding.
Mr. Younger, you testified that you studiously avoided reading any publications concerning the Tate LaBianca murder case. Why did you choose to avoid reading about the case?
It's very unpleasant reading. I have a number of things which I had to do as Attorney General, and, or rather, had to do as District Attorney and now have to do as Attorney General, which require me to read hundreds and sometimes thousands of pages, often with regard to very unpleasant, very gruesome, very bloody activities, and I do that to the extent that it's required, but rereading about these same things in a newspaper just when I'm presumably on my own time and have some choice as to what I want to read is not my idea of a pleasant postman's holiday.
At the time of the Susan Atkins confession, the publication of that confession in the Los Angeles Times, did you make any effort to find out how the Times had gotten a hold of it and then printed it in light of the fact that you were the county's chief law officer and a gag order had been issued by the court?
No, sir, it was not my gag order. I didn't make any attempt to find out how the Times had gotten it. And again, as I explained, I've explained this many times. This has no reference to the present case. One of the troubles with a gag order is that a judge can write any kind of an order he wants to, but a defendant in a murder case is not going to pay a blessed bit of attention to it. What are you going to do to a defendant who's may be sentenced to the gas chamber? Say to that defendant, since you talked to a reporter, I'm going to give you 5 days in jail for contempt. I'm speaking not with reference to this case, but with reference to gag orders generally. So when the story of this defendant was printed in the Los Angeles Times, big deal. Who was surprised? We all anticipate that at some point a defendant in a major case is going to talk to reporters, and there's never been anybody yet figure out a way to prevent it, and I'm not even sure it's, even if you think it's a good idea to prevent it, there's no way to do it.
Mr. Younger, what was the policy and what is the policy of the District Attorney's Office regarding the death penalty in the Tate LaBianca trial?
Well, the district attorney, when I was district attorney, was seeking the death penalty and apparently still are.
Mr. Younger, do you think that Miss Atkins' story in the Times, as you know it, based on what you understand, is more closer to the truth than what happened in the Tate LaBianca case than what she told the grand jury?
I haven't read her story in the Times. I don't know what she says there.
Nowhere on the manuscript or the accounts what you've heard or...
Right. I have not read it, and so I couldn't answer your question.
Mr. Younger, there...
Certain lawyers as qualified and lawyers that are not qualified should not be permitted to try a capital case. That's one of the provisions we're going to include in our package.
Now, at the beginning of this trial, you offered the Supreme Court evidence of Mr. Kenneric's, quote, incompetence, end quote, as I recall. After seeing his performance this morning, what is your attitude, or has it changed from that time?
It's with great reluctance. I don't think I can properly answer that question.
Mr. Younger, were you personally responsible for both decisions regarding Susan Atkins that came out of the district attorney's office?
I approve both. In that sense, I was responsible for both of them. Yes, sir.
Could you tell us what the arrangement was, Mr. Younger?
I'll give you a memorandum.
Would you do that, please?
Yes, sir. Thank you. It very clearly spells it out, and this is in evidence. You can all have a copy of this.
On the question of competence of counsel...
Well, wait a minute. Let him answer the question.
Well, I don't want to read the memorandum, but I'll just give it to
Could
you.
you just verbally tell us what the arrangement was?
The arrangement on December 4th was that I think it was proper. It has nothing to do with my being on the witness stand. Our actions early in the trial, our actions to try to force a determination by the appellate courts prior to trial that a certain lawyer was or wasn't competent was, in our opinion, in the public interest. We hate to be put in the position on appeal. We have been many times where a defendant who's convicted will get a new lawyer, and the new lawyer will come into court and say that this defendant was not adequately represented at the original trial, therefore he didn't get a fair trial. And no one questions but that's going to happen in this case, and naturally we felt it was in the public interest to try to avoid it. We could not avoid it.
If that were to occur, and the competence of...
Sequestering of the jury came after two prosecuting attorneys said they were told this morning by Charles Manson there would be murder and bloodshed if he received the death penalty. The remark allegedly came in a casual conversation between Manson and the attorneys. Defense attorney Paul Fitzgerald was livid over the whole affair, while prosecutor Vincent Bugliosi was vague.
Because of that comment, Joseph Bush, the district attorney of Los Angeles County, and myself asked Judge Older, and we did have the concurrence of all four defense attorneys, to sequester the jury after today's session. Judge Older granted that motion, and the jury will be sequestered.
You care to comment on those remarks?
You're going to take the taxpayers' money to sequester this jury because the prosecution deliberately disseminated for public information a statement allegedly made ex parte to the district attorney. Bear in mind that you only have one side of the story, that Mr. Manson can't answer these allegations, that Mr. Manson's being held incommunicado. Minimal standards of fairness would require that you get both sides of the story. Furthermore, this statement allegedly was made outside the presence of Mr. Manson's attorney. Mr. Kenerick didn't know anything about it. No defense attorney knew anything about this until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Yet the material was disseminated to the media at 10 o'clock in the morning by virtue of a release by the district attorney's office. That's why you had Mr. Bush here. That's why you had Gordon Jacobson from the district attorney's office and John Howard here. Because they know it's reversible error. They know that if this jury got exposed to that kind of virulent, inflammatory information, they'd have a very difficult time being fair in their determination of penalty.
Upon sequestering the jury, Judge Older told the members he had hoped the trial, the penalty phase of the trial, would have ended today. But it didn't, and the judge said this latest hotel stay would probably be just overnight. However, other observers say it may be much longer than that. Phil Nye, Channel 5 News reporting. Mr. Bugliosi, what about the comment this morning made by Charles Manson?
I can't say too much about it. I'm not going to give you the content of the comment. He did make a comment early this morning. Somehow it was released to the press, and now it's gone almost all around the world and back. Trial.
Do you have more to say tomorrow to the jury?
Will I have more to say tomorrow? You mean in my argument? Yes. I should finish tomorrow at about 11 o'clock, 11:30.
Thank you.
Want to rebuttal to that?
Rolling. The remark.
Well, I certainly am questioning the truthfulness of the remark. And in addition, assuming the truthfulness of the remark, I'm talking about the ethics of disseminating it in violation of a court order.
All right, go ahead, Rolling. Mr. Kanarick, one of the co-counsels on this case seems to indicate that the prosecution has disseminated this remark allegedly made by Charles Manson for benefit of the prosecution. What do you know about it?
Regrettably, I just cannot comment or make any statement in connection with your question or that subject matter.
Do you feel that the prosecution did release this statement supposedly made with no defense counsel near so they could use it to their own benefit?
Well, because of the publicity order of Judge Keene and Judge Older, and because of other matters such as the attorney-client privilege, such as the fact that there is law covering this subject matter, I don't feel that I can make any statement.
Is Mr. Fitzgerald within his rights in making the comments he made?
Well, I can't make any comment concerning.
You concur with what he said?
Well, I just cannot make any comment. I just, I mean, I respect you're trying to do a job and all of that, but I also have an obligation, and the only thing I can say is no comment.
No way it means progress back.
Upon sequestering the jury for the night, Judge Older said he had hoped today would bring an end to the penalty phase of the trial. It didn't. The judge told the jury members Take it again. Upon sequestering the jury for the night, Judge Older said he had hoped the penalty phase of the trial, would have ended today. It didn't. So the jurors went to the hotel. The judge said he thought this latest hotel stay would just be an overnight affair. Most other observers, however, feel the jurors may be at the hotel for some time to come, perhaps up to a week, before the penalty phase does end. Phil Nye, Channel 5 News reporting.
I think the jury, if they're able to arrive at a verdict, will arrive at it very quickly. I would guess that the jury would have a verdict within 2 days. That is, if they're going to agree. Now, the death penalty, death versus life, is an emotional decision. It's a very personal, individual decision. These jurors have been thinking about it for at least 8 weeks, and perhaps even as long as 9 months. So I think that they're relatively secure in their position.
Mr. Bugliosi, it's been more than 10 months. Do you breathe kind of a sigh of relief? Are you satisfied with what you have done?
Well, it's been a very long, complex, vigorously contested trial on both sides. representing the prosecution, which in turn represents the people of the state of California. I am satisfied that the prosecution did all we could to convince the jury of the guilt of these defendants and the fact that in view of the brutality of these murders, the defendant should receive the death penalty. That ultimate decision, of course, is now in the hands of the jury, 12 people chosen from this community, and I'm satisfied that whatever verdict they reach is going to be a fair verdict and a proper verdict under all of the circumstances.
Is the appeal of the defense attorneys to the jury in this penalty phase?
No, I'm not going to pass judgment on their arguments, other than to say that most of their arguments were common arguments made by defense attorneys in a capital case. They appealed for mercy, which is expected on their part.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
Mr. Fitzgerald, you've been involved from the very start. How do you feel now that your end of it is over?
Well, it's a tremendous emotional relief. We're all physically and emotionally weary. We've been actively in trial for 9 months, plus we were engaged in rather rigorous pretrial motions for 3 months before that. It's been a long trial, and we're
Are you
damn glad it's
satisfied
over.
with what has happened? The way you have conducted your part of the defense?
Yes, I think that if I had to do the entire thing over again, given the situation and given the circumstances, I wouldn't have changed a thing.
In your final argument today in the penalty phase, you were interrupted. Were you censored by the court for your material?
Well, there's a thin line between what is proper argument and what is considered to be legally improper. Counsel need not refer in their argument to just those things that have been mentioned in evidence, but can draw illustrations from everyday life, from things and facts that are part of the public domain, and things that are common knowledge. I was stopped from arguing to the jury that the court exercises a pro forma function, and that anybody, in terms of immunity, and that whenever the district attorney petitions for immunity, they get it. Now, I know as an attorney that happens to be an absolutely true statement. Never in my experience, nor in the experience of any other attorney, has there ever been a situation where the court refused immunity. But in the unlikely event that a court at some future time would not allow somebody immunity, the prosecution simply need not prosecute them. And that was one of the points at which I was interrupted. Another point was dealing with the prerogative of the prosecution to put on psychiatric evidence. And another point was when I was attempting to describe the ritual on execution day, and fortunately I won that argument, and I was allowed to tell the jury, or allowed to ask the jury to imagine the execution day for Patricia Krenwinkel, Susan Adkins, and Leslie Van Houten.
Would you care to hazard a guess as to how long the jury will take in this penalty phase of their determination?
Of the same mind, I think they'll reach a verdict rapidly.
Thank you.
Long.
Oh, we've been working on it for about 4 years, about 12 of us.
Oh, Deb, what does it look like? Has everybody contributed to it?
Yeah, all the girls in jail.
The Tate LaBianca jury spent their first full day of deliberation today in the penalty phase of the trial of Charles Manson and 3 of his female followers. With a total of 27 possible verdicts, the experts do not expect the jury to return to the courtroom in any record time. The attorneys on both sides admitted yesterday, after their final arguments and Judge Older's instructions to the jury, that they are emotionally and physically drained after more than 9 months of the trial and are happy to have time to rest. The attorneys are on a 45-minute callback in the event of a decision by the jury. About the future of the Manson family, I talked to 4 of the girls at their corner vigil outside the Hall of Justice: Brenda, Sandy, Cappy, and Kitty. Sandy, you've probably been here as long as anybody keeping this vigil, and it now looks that it will come to an end, that they will move the girls and Charlie. What do you girls intend to do?
We'll be here until he gets out. After this trial, there'll be another trial, so they won't move them for quite some time. But we'll be here until he's out, and he is coming out.
What about the girls? What do you feel about the girls?
I love them, and I'm with them wherever they go, in spirit, and they'll also be coming out. Sadie won't be transferred for quite some time because there's that Hinman Shea trial coming up. But
But if they do move them to some other place, will you follow?
Charlie will be coming out soon, and they won't be moving him for some time.
And all of us here on the corner.
How long have you been working on it?
About 4 years. It's for Charlie.
And he will wear it, huh?
Yeah, he'll wear it.
Very confident, right?
Sure, well, we know.
Is that part of the part of your ideal that you do know? You're positive.
Oh, we're completely positive. The jails are coming open, no question. All the jails and the penitentiaries are going to be open very soon.
I notice that you all sit in the same attitude with your hands the same way. Is it significant? What does it mean?
We're on our knees. We're giving up.
You're giving up?
Yeah.
Not on Charlie and the girls, though.
No, we're with them.
In other words, we give up the system. We're down. We give it to whoever wants to take it. We've X'd ourselves out of the system, and we give it all up.
I understand that there are some people that are trying to rescue you from time to time.
Oh, the Jesus people, yeah. Yeah, the Jesus people have, in other words, people see that this is the end, that a revolution's coming, or a lot of big changes are coming. And the Jesus people are slipping into the minds of all the people that are confused and don't know where to go.
Do you feel that the end is in sight and a change is coming also?
Big changes are coming real soon.
You're kind of thinking the same way they are then, aren't you?
Well, everyone you meet talks about it.
You can, even the little old ladies who sit on the corner who have had their welfare checks taken away, and the little old man and all those people, they all come on this corner every day of the week, yelling about revolution and that about the people who are in power better give it up. Nixon better give it up, because if he doesn't, the whole thing's going to be destroyed.
Do you feel that you see a limited segment of life as you sit here, that most of the people that come by here are in trouble?
No, you know what, we see, on this corner we mostly see the people who've been down, for all their lives, because these are the people who are going to court, the black people, the Chicanos, these are the people who spend most of their lives in these courts with their sons going to, jail, and their daughters going to jail. And we see every kind of way of life there is.
Do you think that you might write a book, chronicle your experience here on the corner?
We have a book already.
Do you?
Oh yeah, it's Charlie's writings, our writings from when we all got together. But people have created an image of us all, and the book kind of is contrary to that image, and so they want to perpetuate the lie they've created about us. So really nobody really wants the book.
Oh, I think you'll find somebody that wants it. A lot of people. Thank you so much, girls. Nice to talk to you.
Okay.
Oh, did somebody put that on? Just the first name?
That's fine.
Yeah.
Like a flare pen.
Yeah, it's a thick. And some watercolor pens.
But the stuff is inside the pen.
Yeah.
You don't give it any.
Well, I figured they were just flamboyant about the whole thing there. They didn't seem like they cared one bit about anything. They were just ridiculing the judge and the court and our laws, and I didn't think it was proper for them to act that way.
You think that was an influence in reaching your decision?
No, not necessarily, no. Our influence was mainly from the witness stand. You mean financially?
To make a deal for an exclusive interview with...
Well, I'm not making no deal with anybody.
You know of this, don't you?
I've heard of it, yeah, I have heard of it.
Well, we have substantiated fact that he was talking to an attorney before the trial was over about making this deal. This could jeopardize not only the juror's verdict, but perhaps the whole trial. Do you have anything to say?
It's not true. I mean, as far your person.
I have no knowledge of that. I actually haven't got no knowledge on that.
Of which?
Of the facts that you say that he's not a thing that I know of. I haven't heard him make any comments at all.
Did he ask the jury or suggest to the jury that there was some money to be made if you all stayed together and offered your story together?
That was after the penalty phase?
Did he ever make that statement?
Yes.
When?
When did he make that statement?
Oh, that was made after the penalty phase was read off. We handed the verdict to the judge. After it was all over with.
And then what did he say?
Well, he mentioned something about if we all stuck together there, that it could be making a package deal to capitalize on it.
What was your reaction to that?
My reaction to that there? I didn't think it was right.
Why?
Huh? Why? I believe that I'm rewarded my way there by doing God's will, that I was there. I mean, it was God's will that I was performing a service, and it was my civic duty to society, and that I brought, and that justice was served.
Has Mr. Shealy continued in his efforts to bring you all together?
No, I haven't. I haven't talked to any jurors, and I haven't spoken to anybody but you folks right now. This is the first time I've spoken to anybody at all. I don't get the.
In other words, you said you found the idea of this deal that's been talked about objectionable. My question is, why then did you find it objectionable to give anyone your version of what went on? The trial itself is over. You're free to do this. You have some kind of legal or moral responsibility.
No. I look at it this way there, that my purpose has been served. I mean, I served my purpose to society, and that's what it was my civic duty there. And I figured this way, that it's all over with now, and I want to forget it.
Mr. Tubick, are you under any restraint about making a deal now for yourself or for putting together a package of the jurors to sell?
I'm not making no deal at all there. I'm rewarded myself and that I've served society and done my civic duty there and saw that justice was brought about.
Do you have any
I'm not making no deals with anybody as far as me
money
capitalizing or anything like that there.
Do you have any objection to doing that if somebody approached you properly?
I don't see no sense in it. I'm serving God. I mean, I'm serving society, and that's the way I look at it. I'm not looking for any finances or reward. My reward is that I already done my duty.
Mr. Tubick, do you feel that if Mr. Shealy...
No, we had no decision, and we had no hardships about reaching a decision. There were discussions, there were problems that came up there, but that...
What were the nature of those problems?
Well, we had a lot of the facts kept away from us, and we just had to go by that what was coming off of the witness stand.
By having the facts taken away from you, I mean you weren't allowed to review the transcript or things you didn't hear that...
We didn't know anything about the transcripts. I'm speaking for myself. I never knew there was even a transcript about for the grand jury.
Aside from your own memory then during the trial and the notes of the other jurors,
Do you feel any threat at all, or have you been threatened?
No.
Have you had any phone calls, notes, or anything else?
No, sir.
Any contact from the Manson family, or members of the Manson family, or persons who might be associated with the Manson family?
No, sir.
Mr. Tubick, one of the jurors has gone on record on television as saying that during...
Well, I don't know in which way you mean that. We've had our associations and we've had our inside jokes and we've played around. I mean, we had to in order to amuse ourselves there, but if anybody was having any hanky-pankies or anything like that, I really don't know.
What was it all over again? Would you do it?
Would I do it all over again? It was God's will, yes, I would.
Would you have no regrets spending almost a year of your life away from your family, your friends? You feel that being deprived of this was worth your civic duty?
It was, yeah, and I'd do it all over again if I had to. I really mean it.
Do you feel that it was proper to have the jurors sequestered for this long a time? Do you think the sequestration served a purpose?
Yes, it has. And I have no objection to being sequestered all over again if I had to be.
Do you think it's necessary?
I think it's necessary, yes.
Why?
That way, it wouldn't change any individual's outlook on giving a proper verdict.
You think they could have been swayed by publicity?
I think so, yes. I believe that's true of any case.
Did anything occur when you were released? Held it up.
Well, it held it up, and then I think Mr. Keith done a good job. I mean, it helped Van Houten on that case.
Did the jury have any idea that Mr. Hughes might have fallen victim of foul play?
No, we thought, well, maybe he just took off and was just taking a vacation, maybe delaying the case. Of course, it kind of upset us there, because we didn't see why anybody should be taking a vacation when we were being sequestered.
Did you at any time?
No, it hasn't. No,
Did you at any time think that he might be dead?
There was speculation on it, yes.
Mr. Tubick, how did the antics of the...
It didn't help him any.
How did you...
Well, it was amazing.
Annoy you or see in your mind, well, did he have any effect on
On television said there was promiscuity. He was asked if he meant that word, or did he mean just being relaxed and cool? He said no.
death or life? Had you had the choice of a lesser sentence, maybe even life with the possibility of, without the possibility of parole, would that have made it easier for the jury to reach it?
How do you think that he did have? What was his involvement in the murder, do you think? After
That's what you told me. He was the leader.
Well, he was the leader. I mean, if he wasn't there, nobody, I can't see no possible way of him getting, any of them getting an appeal.
Do you think that?
Well, justice was done.
In other words, they retribution for what they did?
Yes.
That would be the only point of their execution.
Well, that's the only thing. What else could I go on?
Billy, after observing Charles Manson very closely for more than 9 months, what do you personally think of him?
Well, he's, from an artistic standpoint, he's a man of 1,000 faces. He said that on the witness stand, and it's really true. He has more expressions on his face than possibly anyone I've ever, really observed before. He can be, very angry, and then at the same time, a little later, maybe express a very gentle quality. It's amazing, really, to watch that. And just from a personal standpoint, he, really has exhibited these qualities, which are very unusual, I think.
Which of these characteristics did you observe most of the time?
Well, unfortunately, I think there were only a few exceptions when he became violent, and the rest of the time he seemed to be, in a very carefree mood. Not really, well, more or less just as like he was enjoying everything that was going on, and that was kind of the impression that I got, and also from the three girls as well.
You think they got a fair trial?
Yes, I do. I certainly do. I think the judge and the jury should be really commended for, what sitting through 9 months, first of all, and then I think also the jury for taking off from their jobs and listening to the testimony. I think they did. I think they evaluated it in the same way that I would have evaluated it, and I think they came out with a proper decision.
Your shot, it's a two-shot. Tell me anything. How did your husband like his job?
Oh, he enjoys it very much. He works with General Electric computers, and he's been working with them now about 2 years, and he really enjoys it.
Well, the only thing I know about computers is the fact that they have some knobs and buttons on them and that sort of thing. But you must be very opposite since you pursue art and he pursues computers.
No.
We'll let a couple of frames go by the camera. And even the defendants talked about it, but what do you think motivated these four people to do the things they've been convicted of doing?
Well, that's a difficult question. I don't know if anyone really knows.
What's behind it?
I'd say possibly drugs could be, could be a major source of the problem. I think Manson being a habitual criminal had something to do with it. And I don't know, it's just very difficult to say. I don't know if anyone can really, pin it down as to what caused it.
They seem to enjoy restating their position that they felt no remorse over the killings. Is that really true, do you think?
Yes, I really think that's true. When I observed them on the witness stand, they seemed to be, again, very carefree, very, they seemed to feel like they were right in what they did, but there was nothing wrong with doing what they did, so I don't know, it's really kind of a sad situation, They really didn't feel any remorse at all that I could
Screamed at Judge Older that he wasn't able to put on his own defense. Do you think Irving Kinerick did defend Charles Manson in the trial?
Well, yes, in a way. I think Kinerick may have done what Charles Manson wanted him to do. I'm not sure that Charles Manson really wanted a defense in the first part of the trial.
Or was it an adequate defense?
I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to say on that. I really wouldn't say on that question.
What was the most dramatic moment in the trial to you?
I think the most dramatic moment was when Charles Manson leaped over the counsel table and made an attack upon the judge, tried to make an attack upon the judge. And that was, I think, by far the most dramatic moment, because I don't think anybody expected him to really do that.
If you can think back to that moment, what went through your mind at the time when you saw it all happening? Could you believe it?
Oh, well, first of all, I had difficulty seeing it because the attorneys all jumped up, and they blocked the artist's view. And so we were a little uncertain as to what was going on at first, and then we could see them struggling on the floor. And then the two bailiffs put him under control, got him under control. And I was very surprised and kind of wondering, what's going to happen next.
You sat in the courtroom with some of the top journalists from all over the world covering the trial. What's your opinion of them?
I have a very high opinion of them.
What did you learn about news reporters as you observed them operate, as you observed them interviewing attorneys in the hallways and so on?
A very active group, and they seem to be very thorough in their job. And I thought they did from what I observed, I think most of them did a very good job on of reporting on the trial. And
the publicity did not influence the jury, in your opinion, from your standpoint, what you observed?
Not at all. Not at all. I don't think it influenced the jury at all.
You saw the thing yourself each day as it unfolded, and then you got home at night, you heard the news reports, you read the papers. Was it generally treated very fairly or not?
Yes, I think so. I really do. I think everything that I observed during the trial, each day was almost invariably, very accurately reported upon. And I can think of no instance where something to the contrary, was said on the news that when it actually did not happen in the courtroom. I know of no instance.
After observing him at very close range for more than 9 months now, what do you think, personally, of Charles Manson? The attorneys have talked about this and the defendants themselves, but I wonder what you think motivated these people to commit the crimes that they're convicted of committing. That isn't what I said the first time around. What do you think motivated these people to commit these crimes? Do you think they got a fair trial? What was the most dramatic moment of the entire trial? What do you think was the most dramatic moment in the trial? That's enough.
Obviously, there is no statute of limitations for murder, so simply because they don't prosecute Manson at this time doesn't mean they can't prosecute him at some time in the future. They can prosecute him. I think you should also be informed that the prosecution knew of these other offenses. They knew of the so-called Shorty O'Shea case, and they knew of the Hinman case in advance of the prosecutions in Tate LaBianca. It's Kinneric's position that the prosecution was required to join all these offenses and try them at one time and place. To drag it out indefinitely is in a sense a cruel and unusual punishment.
Mr. Fitzgerald, what are you attempting to accomplish by your visit to the county?
Well, Mr. Kinnerick and I approached Kenneth Hahn, a member of the Board of Supervisors, and we asked his assistance in perhaps instituting a taxpayer's suit to enjoin the District Attorney of Los Angeles from proceeding with any further prosecution of Charles Manson. We pointed out to Hahn that Manson has been convicted and sentenced on 7 separate and distinct murder offenses. He's been sentenced to death 7 times, and that it's certainly not in anybody's best interest to continue to prosecute him in order that they can get 2 more death sentences or 3 more death sentences. We're concerned, it's almost like Charles Dickinson's Bleak House. There just isn't going to be an end to this litigation. We approached Hahn because Hahn considers himself to be the guardian of the taxpayers' purse strings, and we estimate that the case will cost these additional prosecutions to get this unwarranted sort of death penalty against Manson will cost the taxpayers an additional $2 million. And we just don't think it's in anybody's best interest.
In other words, you're looking at the economy as far as the county's taxpayers are concerned?
Well, quite frankly, our interests are somewhat different, but we know that's the way to approach Hahn, and we know that, of course, while we know, of course, that he has influence in molding public opinion, and we know from other sources that the taxpayers of this county are very, very disturbed about the amount of money it's cost to prosecute Manson and the other defendants already, and we thought we could coattail them.
What will become of that case then if no one is ever tried for it?
Well,
legally, what is happening?
Well, Manson and Adkins don't want to be present. They don't have any interest in dragging out this case. As a matter of fact, they'd be very happy if they just were allowed to go on to prison, go on to their respective death rows, and be informed of the verdict by postcard. It's really the prosecution that wants to continue to prosecute these defendants, ostensibly for some sort of insurance in the unlikely event the case, the Tate LaBianca case, is reversed on appeal.
What happens when the case is stopped? Are you attempting to quash the original murder charge against Hinman and O'Shea, or for Hinman and O'Shea?
Well, we approached Hahn.
Where does it start?
We approached Hahn, and we asked Hahn to perhaps consider the advisability of the Board of Supervisors on behalf of the taxpayers of the county instituting a lawsuit against the prosecution to restrain and prohibit them from any further prosecution, on the ground that it's an idle act, it's unnecessary.
Does it take a lawsuit, or can't somebody just declare it?
Well, as Hahn pointed out to us, Hahn, although he's not an attorney, Hahn pointed out that in his opinion, based on legal advice he'd received from the county council, it's rather questionable whether a lawsuit would lie. But Hahn did express an enormous amount of interest. First of all, he was unaware that they were going to continue to prosecute Manson. He was unaware of that fact initially. And secondly, he said although he could not, or he didn't feel he could institute a lawsuit, that he might go to the public with it. He might point out to the taxpayers of the county that they're going to be required to spend an additional $2 million or $1.5 million dollars to prosecute somebody against whom you already have 8 death verdicts.
Are there any other persons involved who might escape trial for those 2 crimes if it is dropped against Manson and Atkins?
Well, I don't think so. Of course, there are 2 other defendants. There's Bruce Davis and there's Steve Grogan. Now, we did not suggest to Kenneth Hahn that they shouldn't be prosecuted, and most observers feel that if Manson and Atkins are removed from the case could be tried with relative dispatch at a relatively small cost to the taxpayers. But with the presence of Manson and Manson's attorney Kanarick and the presence of Susan Atkins, the proceedings are likely to take a substantial amount of time, and they're likely to be an enormous amount of attendant publicity, etc. So all we're suggesting is that Manson and Atkins not be prosecuted, not the other 2. They're certainly entitled to be convicted or vindicated as the case may be.
What chance do you think you have of having this accepted?
Well, it's difficult to say. Our legal position appears to be somewhat tenuous in terms of actually instituting a lawsuit to restrain the district attorney of Los Angeles County. On the other hand, as Kenneth Hahn pointed out to us, the influence of public opinion is tremendous. And there is, I know from my own personal experience, everywhere I go, the big topic is the amount of money it's costing the taxpayers. And so I think the pressure of public opinion may well influence the prosecution in the overall handling of the case.
Paul, thank you very much.
Bet, Dick.
Appreciate your time. Very kind of you.
Yeah, I might say.
Mr. Fitzgerald, would this amount to dropping the charges against Manson and Atkins and anybody else involved in the trial? Are there others who would be on trial who would escape prosecution if this was dropped? With what success do you think you'll meet?
You know, this, that, and the other, and everybody looks at it and reads it, and then they go on doing what they're doing, saying, oh no. It's all a question of whether or not they're going to let us go in peace, or whether the madness will have to be strung from one end of the city to the other.
What do you mean by madness, Brenda?
In other words, the people who've been judging, these people who've been judging, they're going to be judged as they've judged. They're using the courtrooms to murder people, innocent people. And this whole trial has just been the truth on trial. They don't have anybody on trial other than their children and the truth. And they can tag us with names, you know, and they can tag him with the name Charles Manson, but he's the truth.
What about your future? Are you going to stay here and you'll get older and older and older?
We get
still
younger
be here
and
on the
younger and
corner?
younger.
So, what do you think of your future? What are you going to do in the future? What are you going to
You
do
know what? We
tomorrow?
don't live in your time. We live in no time. There's no future and there's no past. It's just now, all the time. This city is going to be burning very soon. This city's coming down. The city is falling. Babylon is going to fall. Were you here this morning when they took him?
No, that was real early. Were you girls up?
Somebody was here taking pictures. Somebody was here taking pictures about an hour before dawn.
How do you feel about it, knowing that he's not in there now? Did you have any idea of following him up north for the time that he'll be there?
No. In other words, we're in our thought. We're all in one thought, and they can't separate us. There's no way. In other words, we're together.
Well, you're Brenda and Cappy and Kitty sitting here. Sandy's missing. Where Mary's missing.
Oh, they're moving the truck.
Oh, are they? Where's the vest? I understand that you put some of your hair on the vest. Is that true?
Yeah, all of us and all the girls in jail, and it's all around the collar, just hanging down over the vest.
How does it look?
Oh, it's beautiful.
Really?
It's really beautiful, yeah.
When do you suppose he's going to get a chance to wear it?
When he gets out.
Still have a lot of confidence.
Sure.
Kitty, you're sitting here not working on anything at this moment. What kind of thoughts are running through your mind?
No thoughts.
No?
No thoughts.
You miss the fact that Charlie's not up in this building?
He'll be back. He has another trial.
Hey, where did they go?
What?
Well, whatever they do to him, they have to do to us.
I don't know. Why would they have to do anything to you? You guys haven't done anything.
It's like when Judge Older sentenced them all to go to the gas chamber, he sentenced the 3 girls to death in the gas chamber. He sentenced Charlie to death in San Quentin. He didn't say the gas chamber. In other words, for Charlie to come back down here and go on trial, the whole other trial will come out in the open. All the witnesses who've been coerced, all this, all the shady deals, all this will come out in the open. So the last thing they really want is for another trial to go on, because it's going to show. The only thing that we're concerned about at all is our children, that there's something left for our children.
And are you making a place for your children here? Is this what?
Here?
Yeah, what you're doing now.
In other words, we are speaking to all the people of my life, for my children, to see that there's something left for them.
Is that the reason
I
you
mean, look
think?
in the newspaper. The Earth, all these articles about the Earth. You know, is it going to last? Is it going to? Oh no, you know, it's getting pretty heavy, you know. They're ready to put their finger on that button and blow the whole thing up. And like, we see that there's something left to save for the children. If it's just a sunset, you know. It's like the way it's going now, everybody's going insane.
Cappy, what are you writing? You writing a letter to someone, or just putting your thoughts down on paper?
Yeah, I'm writing to my brother in the penitentiary, one of many brothers we have in the penitentiary.
that we're in touch with.
What do you tell them? Just about what's going on outside?
You know, what I see out here.
Are you at all optimistic?
This morning, here we are.
Sheriff's deputies searched a rundown chicken ranch outside of Lancaster Lake today. They were investigating suspicious diggings around the ranch where 5 missing children of a Manson family member were found yesterday. The children were discovered hiding in a 5 by 3 foot covered dirt hole in a chicken coop at the back of the ranch. They were unharmed. The ranch has been identified as a hangout for members of the Manson family. Sergeant Charles Gunther, who's been working on the Manson case from the very beginning, was at the scene today.
Early this morning, we received information that there was possibly a body or bodies up here, that there were mounds of dirt that indicated there were grave sites or simulating burial sites. But we ordered in the posse, or asked for the posse and the assistance of our Emergency Services Bureau, and they've checked the area, and all of the sites that we found don't indicate anything like that.
Were there similar diggings or holes at other Manson family locations?
Yes, in Goler Wash there was burial sites like this that we actually thought at the time were bodies, and upon digging them up they were nothing. Very similar to what we have here.
2 juveniles were arrested at the site yesterday on narcotics possession charges, and a 14-year-old runaway girl was found at the ranch and placed with juvenile authorities. From Lancaster, Stan Chambers, Channel 5 Action News, reporting.
Yeah, fine.
Sergeant, what have you found here?
Well, we came up here because of the children that were found yesterday being part of the Manson family, and me knowing, or because I've known them in the past years. We found 4 children in a small hole here covered over with a piece of plywood, and then 1 baby in a larger hole. We did have a runaway located, a 14-year-old runaway that was located inside the house.
Just how does this connect with the Manson family, Sergeant?
The 4 children that were found in the hole are the children of one of the Dennis Rice, who, although he wasn't attached to the family in the first year that I knew the family, he became associated with the girls later on, and while they were on the corner.
Sergeant, you've been to many of the family locations. How does this compare with some of the others?
I'd say this is a typical family hangout with the dirt, the way the children are living, and I see no difference between here and Gold or Wash or Spawn Ranch.
You say the children were back there hidden. Do you think that the children were hiding from the officers when they came here, or do you think they were placed back there?
Well, I don't know whether they were placed, but ordinarily that's what they were taught to do, to hide from the police. They were taught to run to places like that. It would be possible that the older ones could have run back there, but the smaller ones, I would suggest that they were placed there.
Has the parents of the little baby been identified?
No, we have one young child that hasn't been identified yet, and we're in the process of trying to make that identification now.
The search party today and the men on horseback, just what are they looking for? Or is that typical also?
Absolutely. When we were in Gold or Wash, we recovered a great number of dune buggies that they had moved in under practically inaccessible terrain. This is a general Manson-type residence, if you want to call it that.
What is the status now of Rice?
I talked with an officer this morning, and he tells me that the Dennis Rice was released about 3 weeks ago, although I don't have any personal knowledge of that. He had been held on a grand theft charge. I really don't know what the exact status is.
Now, have the 4 children been returned to the mother?
Not as yet. In fact, we're trying to reach the mother now. We're in the process of trying to find her.
Isn't that too bad? Down in the front, please. You gotta get a real good shot at it, yeah.
I know him. Well, you did it again, didn't you, punk?
Down in the front, please. Down in the front, please.
Okay, get out of the way. You want to hold it up here? We got to get these prisoners through.
Yes, sir. Let me go over there.
Sorry about that.
Down, Sam. Yeah. Come on, there, Ben.
Get it?
Huh?
No communication with anybody in custody, ma'am.
Well, it's the policy of the district attorney's office that attorneys should say what they have to say in court. I have done so. I have no further comment at this time.
Prosecutor, you did bring up one interesting point. Why did they want to use the weapons?
I cannot comment.
You did.
Well, the reasons for the second trial have already been stated, I think, by Mr. Bush. There are several reasons for the second trial. In the first place, there's the question of an appeal in the Tate LaBianca case. In the second place, the charges in the second trial are murder charges, perhaps the most serious crime that can be committed by anyone, and not charges lightly to be dismissed. In the third case, I think the involvement of Mr. Manson and the other persons who have been convicted of murder indicated the sort of the type of thing that should be prosecuted to the fullest extent.
Will you go for the death penalty?
There will be a penalty phase in which the jury will decide which penalty to impose, life imprisonment or death, for the crimes of which Mr. Manson's been convicted.
What about this outburst that he made right after the verdict? Did you hear what he said?
I heard him say something. I don't remember what he said.
Tony, what is your reaction to the amount of time that they deliberated over the 9 days in relation to the small amount of deliberation time in a Grogan trial?
Well, I think that the length of deliberation in this case shows the difficulty in prosecuting a murder case in which the body of the deceased has not been recovered or produced. I also think that it shows the fact that the jury in this case was not influenced by pretrial publicity about Mr. Manson, that they made a conscientious effort and did make a conscientious effort to return a verdict based on the evidence in this case.
How quickly after the second part of the trial is finished will he be taken up to San Quentin?
I don't know. I don't know.
With Manson already under a death sentence, why was this second trial necessary?
That would depend on the evidence offered by the defense. I really don't know. It should last perhaps a week.
Why was the judge so deliberate in asking whether the jury had seen or read or heard about the Manson case?
He was referring to the verdict, death penalty verdict returned in the Grogan case over the weekend while the jurors were deliberating. However, he established that all television and radio and newspapers were removed from the jurors prior to the time the verdict was announced, so that the jurors could not have heard anything about the verdict in the Grogan case.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
As to your interpretation of what happens in the courtroom, I can only say that the attorney-client relationship is not, it's a viable type of relationship. People do not agree, And when a man has just been found guilty of supposedly 3 counts of first-degree murder, it's I would think automatic that he would become unhappy with the person that's representing him.
Well, what did he say in the courtroom after
pardon?
the verdicts were read? What did he say in there to the judge?
Well, I say, by the way, I say purportedly found guilty. We got to remember that this deliberation, I think, is some 10 or 11 days in time between the time that the jury went out and today's alleged verdict or verdicts.
Why do you call them alleged? Why do you call them alleged, Mr. Canerick?
Well, because, thank God, we have, in this country, we have appellate courts, we have certain guarantees, hopefully, that will protect defendants from the political circus atmosphere that the district attorney and the present attorney general of California have deliberately, and the chief of police of Los Angeles have deliberately put upon Mr. Manson. It's interesting to note that the scandal, for instance, that's developing in the Los Angeles Police Department may well involve people who have had a lot to do with the prosecution of Charles Manson. The Tate LaBianca case was prosecuted practically completely by the Los Angeles Police Department. None of us, I don't care whether we're lawyers, judges, policemen, none of us are incapable of having human frailties. And when you impose upon a trial the publicity that has occurred here, are you sure that the man is getting a fair trial? I mean, when you look as to what happened.
Have you talked with Manson since? Have you talked with him privately since the verdicts?
No, I haven't talked with him since the verdicts have come in.
There was an outburst in court.
I might say this, that every one of the jurors in this case, it was impossible to get a jury where the jurors did not know the results of the Tate LaBianca case. Each one of us consider whether we feel that we would like to go to trial where, in a case where everyone on the jury knew that we were convicted allegedly of 7 counts of murder and had received 7 death sentences.
Why did you have the verdicts reread?
Well, that's a point. That's a technical point of law for the record and for appellate matters.
Well, Mr. Canerick.
Well, you were in the courtroom, sir. I did not memorize. I don't try to memorize what happens in a courtroom. I try to look at the record and see what happened.
Did you read the record of what he said?
No, it hasn't been typed up yet, so it's not possible to have read it. So I really don't know what words Mr. Manson said. But there are times in a person's life.
Cut it.
When well, I can't discuss that because the attorney-client privilege we're going to assume that such a case. If any one of us were in the kind of custody